Okay, welcome to our Moshiach class, our Monday night Moshiach class, because Moshiach matters. And let's get cracking over here. As always, we have an action-packed sikha tonight. It's actually a pretty short sikha, if I'm not mistaken. If my memory serves me right. And let's get started. Over here. Over here. And I can move this here. Move this here. And then move this here. And then we can start. Okay. We're in Parshas Truma. Poschin v'bracha. We're opening with a blessing. V'prat b'amdeinu b'tchila v'knisa l'chodesh Adar. As we are standing in the beginning, in the entering of the month of Adar, it is Rosh Chodesh today, tonight, right now. So I'm happy Rosh Chodesh, as we know that when the month of Adar enters, we are supposed to increase in joy, as we're going to learn about shortly. So it's a great time right now, this month. Okay. As I just said, as we know, there's a commandment and an obligation that we enter into the month of Adar, where to increase in joy. And we know that mazal, in this month, our mazal is healthy. The Yisrael, the Jewish people have a healthy mazal in the month of Adar. And B'mila, move on. Shebnei Yisrael mitbrachim as minchad b'brachas, and therefore automatically we can understand from this that it's a time of great blessing for Am Yisrael. So the mazal is, without getting too deep into it, is there's basically 5 levels of the soul. There's the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, and yechida. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama are the 3 levels of the soul that are enclosed in the body. They're connected to your physical, your emotional, and your intellectual. The mazal is connected actually to like the spiritual connection to God above, and it's actually too lofty, too holy to enter into the physical body, and therefore it kind of hovers above in Shemayim. And then higher than that is the Yechida, which is a state of complete oneness with God. So the level of mazal is called the Chaya, and this is called the living. And basically how it works is that energy is kind of an interface between us and God. And in the month of Adar, it's very powerful and it's very strong, and it has an influence for great blessings in this month. You see what I'm saying? You said the Gemara, and even more than this, it's brought down in the Gemara. Kashem shemiknas mamatin b'simcha kach shemiknas adar marbi b'simcha. So the Gemara takes it a step further. It says in the month of Av, we are to diminish our joy, and therefore in the month of Adar, we are to increase our joy. Halachach bar Yisrael diise le dina bahar nichnari ishtamit mine ba'av diria mazali lemitzin nafshi be'adar debria mazali. L'chora ma tochen hashvo the Gemara kashem shebiknas av mamit chuduchu kach minas adar marvim. L'chora hariza mameit es gadol b'simcha b'chodesh Adar. So the Rebbe asked a question: why is it that the Gemara specifically states that in the month of Av you're supposed to diminish your joy, and also therefore in the month of Adar you are to increase it? The Rebbe says this seems to be diminishing the great joy of the month of Adar, because why first preface that you have to diminish in Av and then you increase in Adar? Why not just say that? We know that the month of Adar we increase in our joy. Yeshmar the Rabbah, and even furthermore, Lashon Hazara rabbis teach us Kashem shemiknas ad mami'itin b'simcha kach miknas Adar marvim b'simcha bo lelomed miyot simcha b'chodesh Av niknas ba'isatoichen shel riboy b'simcha b'chodesh Adar. So the Rebbe is kind of flipping a little bit and says, therefore, how much more so do we have to increase in our joy in the month of Adar? Since we already have an obligation to decrease it in Av. Therefore, we should increase even more than normal in Adar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nidbareh. שכן כוונה ותכלס מיעוט השמחה בחודש אב היא רק בכדי להפכו מחשכה נהורה ממורה למתוקה. And the idea is that we should transform and turn over in the month of Av any darkness to light and any bitterness to sweetness. It's a tremendous month if you need to have a surgery or a court case or any type of outcome that potentially is unknown or could be, God forbid, negative. The month of Adar is a good time to do it because it's as we say, a very healthy month for the Jewish people. And from this we see that we have to increase in this great joy, Mazal, because our Mazal is healthy. That's why we're supposed to increase in joy. Mazal. And this should be a joy in and of itself that is good and we revealed good. In other words, we don't need a reason to be happy. And in Adar, it's emphasized even more that we should be joyful just to be joyful. But how much more so because it's a commandment. Okay. And this joy should also transform or turn over any undesirable matters to things that are good. והם דברים הריפויים או ממציאים רק שהם מטבולים ומתוקנים היטב, שנעשה מעדניין לחשיב נפש. ועל דרך זה מיתוסף אוי יושר הבטוחה בברכה. And according to this, we should add on even more to this concept of opening up with a blessing. Bracha b'kol, a blessing in all matters. Now, keep in mind when the Rebbe is blessing us that we should be blessed in all matters. This is not a simple thing. We're talking about a blessing from the leader of our generation, from the Moshe of our generation. And by repeating these words right now, we are re-engaging the Rebbe's blessing and opening up the Rebbe's blessing for all of us. And also the Rebbe says any undesirable things should be immediately turned over to blessings and joy. The bracha ikri me'inin shehazman gemara bracha gula mitzvah shlema ode Moshiach tzikin. And of course the Rebbe says the main and the most important blessing is that we should have the full his galus, the full revelation of Melech HaMashiach, which is the ultimate blessing. And then we'll have the complete joy. And our mouths will be filled with laughter, as God promises us. And we'll have the completion of a healthy mazal. And that all the Jewish people will literally, all the undesirable, and we've been through a lot of undesirable things, all the bitterness, all the darkness will be transformed to revealed goodness, blessings, and lights. That is what is waiting for us in the true and complete redemption, and what we have a foretaste of right now as we're entering into the month of Adar. Base. Tchilas Chodesh Adar Chala B'Shavua the Parshas Truma. And we also see that the opening of the month of Adar begins in this week's Parsha, Parshas Truma. V'al pi hayadua shalomdim hashana yesh shaychos the Parshiyos. And we know that, of course, everything is Hashgacha Pratis, and every single year whatever festivals or whatever days occur during the parsha of the week, there's a message and a connection for us. So we have to understand what is the connection to Parshas Truma, this week's Torah portion, in the month of Adar. And we know we enter in the month of Adar, we increase in joy, because our mazal is healthy. Shel Yisrael, that Parshas Truma, and we see this especially in this week's Parsha Truma. In addition, in general, to the month of Adar, excuse me. And not only that, the Rebbe says it's specifically and emphatically even more powerful in the year we find ourselves in now. Reason Aleph, in that particular year when the Rebbe gave the Sikha in Nun Beis 1992, the Rebbe explained there was 2 months of Adar. In the Hebrew calendar, when we have a leap year, it's a little different than the American calendar. The leap year happens, I think, 3 times or 4 times out of every 7 years. And the way we kind of balance out between the lunar and the solar calendar, which the Hebrew calendar is based on, is there's an extra month of Adar. In that particular year, there was 2 months of Adar, and therefore Parshas Truma was read on what is called Adar Rishon, the first month of Adar. And secondly, Beit Hayamim the Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon. There's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh in the first month of Adar. Although B'Yamei Gimel V'Daled B'Shavua, and they fall on the 3rd and 4th day of the week, exactly like now, Tuesday and Wednesday, 3rd and 4th day of the week. Okay, Gimel Mivan B'Hagdim Diok B'Parshasenu, and now let's get into the precise language of this week's parsha. And Hashem commands in the beginning of the parsha, "Yichuli truma," and you shall take for me a truma, an offering. They were building the mikdash, the traveling tabernacle, as they call it in English. And Hashem asked for an offering that it should be built in a certain way. And what did he ask for? V'zot truma asher tiku me'atem, and these are the offerings that you should bring to build the Mishkan. Zahav v'kesef v'nechoshes, gold, silver, and copper. Yudua hashayla, and a question arises. Madua b'tchila truma the Mishkan davka zahav. Why do we begin specifically when God is asking for all the Jewish people to make an offering to the Mishkan? Why is the first thing he asks for gold? You know, anyone who has invested in gold in the last several months is sitting pretty good right now because it's on a tear. It's the highest thing it's ever been. It's wild. It's dipped a little bit, but the price of gold is soaring. And there's connections to these things, but it's not time to go into it. Anyways, notice for the cloudless and we have to add on to this question about why God asked for gold first. The varim hayu tzurichim hiksav b'seder min kol ad hakavod. And the reason why the question is even strengthening is because the general way that we have things listed in the Torah and is from what we say lighter to heavier. In other words, we start with the less significant thing and build up to the more significant thing, which seems to be the opposite because we're starting with gold, which is heavier in the sense of meaning value, more important. And that seems to be not the case in our situation. And it says the commandment to make the offerings to the Mishkan was a commandment incumbent upon all the Jewish people. In other words, God wanted everyone to join in this building the Mishkan and bringing offerings for it. But Pashtus and in a simple sense, we know that the Jewish people were all rich because when we went out of Egypt, we were all wealthy. Nevertheless, there was still a hierarchy of distribution of wealth. Because not everyone had the same abilities to offer equally. Shehein mitzivoy yoiser etzel kol bnei Yisrael. The varim shebehem lehem mishtavim yoiser. The achar mikan the menois zahav v'shayach bi'ikar etzel Yehudim v'Esrim Asrim yoiser. So the idea the Rebbe is saying is that what would have made more sense is that God would have first asked for the silver or the copper first, being that it was more readily available. Again, the Jews were all rich, but gold still was a scarcity. It was not as plentiful because it's a more precious metal. We have the same situation. That's why gold is so valuable, because it's not as common as silver or copper, which was more. So if the goal was to get everyone involved in this process, seemingly God should have first asked for the silver or the copper, where more people would have been able to donate, and then built up to the gold, where there would be less people available, but the idea is that everyone should be part of it. And the question's strengthened even further, because once God asked for the gold, the silver, and the copper, he continued to ask for more things, and they were Etzel b'nei Yisrael v'l'chol Yisrael, a Mishkan, other items that were needed for the Mishkan, the Chelis, which is Argaman, which is turquoise wool, then you have dark red wool, Ta'oilos, then you have crimson wool, Shnei v'sheish, then you have linen, v'izin, v'orois, then you have goat's hair, then you have the skin of a ram, meta'amim, and you have red techeres. And what's happening is it's becoming more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? The items that were asked for after gold, silver, and copper were becoming more rare as they asked for them. Because not everyone had these other items, or very few in quantity. And then it continued to go on. The Achra Mekan Eitzi Shitim, and then asked for the cedar wood, which even less people had available. Because even less people had that. But the Varim Acharonim, and the final things he asked for were Sheman the Ma'or, Va'avnei Shochim, Va'avnei Ma'aluim, Shirach and Nisim Kavod. Then he asked for the precious stones for the Kohen's breastplate. And so what happened was, the beginning of the request for items for the Mishkan started with gold, the rarest, then to silver, the second rarest, and then copper, the third. And then from there, it followed the proper order, which we spoke about a minute ago, which is the more available to the less available. Every item we mentioned in that list, it became rarer and rarer and rarer until we got to the stones for the Kohen's breastplate, which is the rarest, which were the least available. So the second half of the offering of the Mishkan followed the normal sequence of more available to less available. But in the beginning, it started with the less available to the more available, starting with gold. So it strengthens the question even more as to why God asked for gold first. Exactly what we just said. He and we said before that even though the Jewish people all had a lot of gold and silver and copper after going out of Egypt, and God told us to take all the wealth out. Is just what we said again. Nevertheless, the gold was still a lot more scarce. And even more than this, they had, of course, more copper than silver, and more silver than gold. Ramban recall ish asher tepanif. Tenufas zahav lo haya rabim v'hachrime hakesef and hachoishes v'lo yisah ramas v'zahav v'ruvas hakesef and hachoishes. Just again emphasizing this question again. Hatam pashtus ein zehu gam ki la'asiyas hamishkan v'kilav hatzrich v'yisur kesef and hachoishes v'zahav. Okay. And according to this, the question's even strengthened further, Medua Trumas Mishkan Matira Dafka Zahav. Why is the opening request by God to bring donations to the Mishkan start with gold? Okay. Nevertheless, there is to say, Shahatorah Munas es Yud Gimel Adavarim, Matlin the Seder Hashivoisai, 13 things that were required to bring, and their normal order, as we said again, is in accordance to their importance. Zahav hu hachashavu benehem, and of course, the gold is the most precious, most valuable. Avnei shochim va'avnei moluim, and it ends with the stones, the stones for the breastplate, which are the rarest. Shem devraim yoser mechashavim mahadavarim mechasuvim lefanez nimseim rak b'seif. Base ikar hatzivoy the niduvas hamishkan oid Yisrael hayelo noiga hashivoy hadavar, because the idea was not to focus on the most important and highest things. Other mitzav b'fol Shabbat Yisrael either not v'tzrik mishkan. Because the idea was to get as many people involved. And then, of course, again, we're strengthening the question. So why are they commanded first to bring the gold? So we brought a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense that the first thing that was asked of the Jewish people to bring was the gold. So let's going to start explaining why. First, we have to begin with the general idea of the Mishkan. Tabernacle, again, as they call it in the English vernacular. Yasisas Hakdama HaMishkan Hashem. He said, Tului B'Kol B'nei Yisrael. As we just pointed out, that to preface, the Mishkan was dependent on all the Jewish people being involved. Men, women, and kids all joined together. All were part of building this Mishkan. It was an obligation of every Jew. It wasn't just for the rich people, it was for every single person. As Rambam says, excuse me, everyone is precious to God, and therefore is incumbent upon every single one of us to be involved in this process. So now we have to understand. Says the heavens cannot contain you, God. Meaning that God's essence is only really revealed down here in the physical world. We spoke about this concept previously. The Sefer Yetzirah talks about the example of a coal and a flame. A flame is spiritual, if you will. Fire, coal is physical. But if you take the coal and you set it on fire and it's burning, right? And the only way the flame can continue to grow is if it's connected to the coal. Because if you have a flame without attaching to something, it will just evaporate because the spirituality doesn't hold anything. So spirituality needs physicality to reveal, to connect to. That's why our souls had to have a physical body as a basis to hold it. And that's why God's true essence can only be revealed down here in this physical world. And therefore the command was, build me a Mishkan, and I will not dwell in it, I will dwell amongst you. Meaning God wants to dwell down here in this physical world. And to do that, he had a physical moving temple, if you will. And then he had two big Beis Hamikdashes, and the third one's coming. But ultimately what he wants is to dwell inside every single one of our bodies in this physical world. The Dafcha Bayit Hazeh, in this place. Here, specifically amongst the Yidden in the Mishkan. The Fiza Haryatzrich Lehakora, Bichdei, the Vanus, and Mishkan, the Hashem, Kukim, the Anashim, Na'alim, B'Yosir, Bein, B'nei Yisrael, Shesh B'Kocham, Nesais, Beit Kazeh, Hashchina, Tishav, Yizgala. It required all of us in order to get this dwelling of God down here. Aval B'chein, Amaras HaTorah, it says in the Torah, Shahamishkan, Tuli Dakwa, B'nei Tzvais, B'Padras, Shakol Yehudi. Every single one had to be involved in this process. God doesn't say, I only want to dwell amongst the Torah scholars or the rich people or the people who fill my mitzvot. God says, I want to dwell amongst every single one of you. I want to be with all of you. Still struggling off a bit of a cold here. We already said them. Men, women, and children. Including the simplest Jew. Isha pshuta. Even a little child. In this physical world, in a physical dwelling. Because the heavens of heavens cannot contain God. He needs to dwell and wants to dwell down here in the physical world. Again, emphasizing the importance of every single one of us. Upra, and specifically, vichuli truma, and that's what it means. Bring me an offering, because I want to be part of all of you, and I want all of you to be part of me. Build a dwelling place for me. הננו בכל בני ישראל, אנשים נשים וטף, כמו שכתוב ברמב"ם, עד ששלמות העבודה לשמה בתוך אהבה. היה מלא גדול באוהל ואין כל חכם זכה לו השם. And the idea is that everything we should serve Hashem for its own sake. Not to see a reward, not because we want something in return, but because He's God and He creates us. And we want to give thanks to our Creator. The Zohar Kodesh I was actually just learning the other day said you should never stand before God Almighty with a prayer that doesn't begin with praise. In other words, for better or for worse, there's an old saying that there's no atheist in a foxhole. Meaning in the time of war, everyone becomes religious. I remember during the Second Lebanon War, I was in yeshiva. We went to the border of Lebanon, and we handed out hundreds, not thousands of Moshiach cards, of tzitzis, of kippas, of chayinos, of chitas, I said that already. Every single soldier was lining up to put on tefillin. No one was going across that battle plan and saying, nah, it's not for me. I'm not religious. God is in my heart. Every single person realized life or death. It's not just when you're in war. In every stage of our life, God forbid if someone's facing a hard time or troubles, who do they turn to? They turn to God. God, help me. Like, and then they get out of their problems, and it's like they forget about God again, right? So the Zohar says, if you're going to turn to God and ask for something, you need to start with praise. In other words, blessing God, thanking God, telling God how awesome He is, telling He's wonderful, how much I appreciate that you give me life, God. How much I thank you for air, for eyes, for ears, for nose, for mouth, that so many things we take for granted every single day. But when something goes wrong or doesn't go our way, we get angry, we get cranky, everything is... But we should always start, if you're going to ask for something, start with a blessing, start with gratitude, start with thanks. And that's the idea. We need to serve God in the Ishma for its own sake. Not because we're looking for something in return. Because He's God, He's our Creator. Hey, so let's delve a little deeper into these ideas. The commandment to build the Mishkan specifically came after giving the Torah. The Matan Torah, it's a continuation of the giving of the Torah. And I chose you from amongst the nations. God chose us to accept His Torah. He chose every one of the Jews of the Yidden, specifically our physical bodies. You will become a holy nation to me, a nation of priests, God says, to all the Jewish people. Before the giving of the Torah, there was a decree that the spiritual energy from above could not be drawn down into the physical world, and we couldn't elevate the physical things above to heaven. But after the giving of the Torah, that decree was nullified. And then what happens? That our true godly core, the true essence of God, is revealed in our physical bodies down here. There's no more separation, if you will, between what we say is Gashmius and Ruchnius. We're about to enter into the completion of this, where we will soon realize that physical and spiritual is one thing. They're created by the same infinite God. Infinite God has infinite powers, and two of those main powers are what we say is Gvul and Bli Gvul. Gvul means bound, physical limitations like a body, and Bli Gvul means spirituality. That is, there's no limitations to it. It's infinite. And the idea is to combine these two things together. Most people think of God, they think of, it's some spiritual up there in heaven. No, God is just as much in this physical reality as he is in the spiritual reality. We just don't perceive it because we don't have the spiritual eyes to perceive it. But the idea is that literally that God and the physical world, it's no separation. There's no difference. And that's what the Rebbe says now. And literally, God literally put a portion of himself in every single Jew. And it says, if you have a portion of something, you have the whole thing. If you're holding on to a little corner of $100 bill, you don't say, I only have the corner. You have the whole thing. So there it says, Yisrael Kudshu B'chu Kuluchad. God and the Jewish people are truly one. But Matan Torah ve'ilech, and in Matan Torah, this was revealed. Mitziyaisei shall call Yehudi he Mabal Chabad Al Chetzeni Yosei he Avabichei. Avabi, excuse me, Shecheti Yisrael Ayu. Yesh lo Nekuras HaYehudas. And we say that God forbid, after the Torah, what happened? There was a great Yerida, a great descent. We had a moment of, what should we say, confusion. There was, the Jewish people sinned. They made a golden calf, which has a lot of deep implications that we're not going to go into right now. But how can it be? God said that it was a brief moment of insanity, as they say, that a Jew would never, ever intentionally sin against God. We don't know how to. It's only when we become confused. As the Rambam says, the Rambam says the true inner will of every Jew is to serve God. There's no doubt about it, no question about it. If you see a Jew anywhere in the world, I don't care if they're living in Thailand with some beautiful Taiwanese Thai woman, eating coconuts and grapes every single day, or they're living in a giant yacht off the coast of Ibiza. It doesn't matter. They really want to serve Hashem. It's just that will has been covered over, but what we say is klipa, or a shell, or impurity, to separate us from truly what it is that we want. And like we said, every Jew truly wants to serve their Creator. And if you see a Jew sinning against God, the Rebbe said it's only chitzoni. In other words, it's very external. It's not really who they are. And it's only because for a brief moment they're under attack by undue influences from forces of evil. Yisrael is, and even more than this. Even a Jew is serving God not for the right purposes because they want a reward or something like that. It says that it's better that they should learn Torah or serve God not for the right reasons, because nevertheless, ultimately what will happen is it will become for the right reasons. The main thing is the deed, as the Rebbe says. The action is the main thing. The intention, I feel my glasses are crooked again. The intention is something that can come along after the fact. We need to do. That's the most important thing. Ultimately, that if a Jew is serving God for the wrong reasons, it will ultimately come for the right reasons, out of true love. That everything the Rebbe is making a difference between what we say is penimi and chitzoni. that if a Jew is sinning against God, God forbid, it's chitzoni, which means it's outer. It's not his true dimension. If someone is serving God because they want a reward or they want to get smart or they think there's some kind of personal benefit from it, that is not their true intention. That is, again, chitzoni. It's something external to them. Internally, they want to do it for the right reason. But it's a process. And sometimes you have to do things for the wrong reason to ultimately come to the right reason. According to this, we could begin to understand how every Jew, men, women, and children, have the power to serve Hashem and to be part of the Mishkan. For the right reasons. Because when the Torah was given, we reached a new existence. We became a nation, Am Yisrael. We became literally connected and bound to God. And this existence always existed above in the spiritual realms. But when we received the Torah, it was translated down here into the physical world and into our physical bodies. And our inner being at that moment became completely connected and driven to state in a state of oneness with God. Without any other reason. Not because we were afraid of something or we wanted a reward or we were looking for something. Because it's true. And our desire is to do what is true. And therefore, we were given the power to bring about the existence in this physical world and to transform this world into a dwelling place for God. Mishkan or Mikdash to Hashem, a dwelling and a home for God. As God says, build me a dwelling, a home, and I will dwell amongst you. Meaning, this is baked into our DNA. This is why Jewish people have such guilt, because we're always feeling that we should be doing something else. Especially if, God forbid, we're doing the wrong thing. Because our inner connection to God is always there and it's always strong. And the idea is that the more we connect to this, the more it becomes revealed. And at some point, it becomes revealed anyways, right? To have people like me and like many other hundreds of thousands, millions of Baal Teshuvas in the world who are living a life completely opposite God. And then all of a sudden, we have an awakening and a realization that the life we're living is, we say, sheker. It's not real. It's not true. We're not getting enjoyment anymore from it. Something feels like it's missing. And God is awakening our soul. And to the point where we realize that we need to realign our actions in a revealed way with our true will and our true intentions inside of us, which is really to connect to our Creator. Vav. And according to everything we mentioned above, we can now start getting into the understanding and reason why we were commanded as the very first thing to bring to the Mishkan as gold. שהקדוש ברוך הוא מונע הנדבוי שיהודי צריך להביא, ובדחיר זהב, כי בזה הסברת חשיבויסי מעלסה שיהודי, שראשון במד, מתנשא הוא זהב, הדבר החשוב ועיקר בישראל. Oh, so the Rebbe says like this. And the reason we were commanded to bring gold as the first offering, and as we said for the last 45 minutes, all the reasons why it doesn't make sense, is because it's the true connection of who we are. The first and most important and innermost dimension of us is gold. What does it mean? That the new existence of the Jew that came into being as a nation after we received the Torah, souls and bodies down here in the physical world, it is necessary, therefore, also to build the temple, also silver and copper. Nevertheless, the gold is not just referring to our physical gold. It's referring to our essence, who we really are, of the source of the godly soul that is inside of us, that get put in there after God chose us to be his nation after we received the Torah. And then it says over here, Ben Melech, the children of the king of God. And even more than that, Melech Atzmai. And it says the son of a king is like a king himself. And therefore, since the main essence of what a Jew is, our main core is God. Therefore, the first thing we're commanded to give is gold. What does gold stand for? Zahav is a Russia Tevis, is an acronym for Zeh Anotain Bria. And this is giving you health, Bria, well-being. Anotain, Gam even as it exists down here below in a physical body. And the ultimate completion in this physical world of physical and spiritual. There's a lot to unpack here. I don't want to go too deep into it because I think the Rebbe is going to explain. But just briefly, what the Rebbe is saying over here is the core of every single Jew is a godly core. It's a godly soul. The key to success in life, financial success, health, well-being, clarity, direction, purpose, family, peace, good, everything you could think of comes from that godly core. When we ignore that godly core and instead we focus on the lesser important things, like the animal part of us that is more focused, let's call it to the silver and the copper of eating, drinking, clothes, parties, fun, homes, cars, physical things, we're completely out of alignment. When someone is out of alignment, they're prone to sickness or disease. The Rebbe says that when we realign ourselves, and the first thing we bring to God is our godly soul. In other words, when we make God the most important aspect of our lives, this is how we reconnect to not only ourselves, but to God. And this is the gold, this is the core inside of us. And when that becomes activated, we're getting blessings, health, goodness, all of the results of recalibrating, refocusing ourselves to our Creator. Okay, and even more than this. Notice that the kaksha hadama hazahav mizbatas o melasai v'chashivoisai shel Yehudi v'chlo. Is that noiga miuchad inin v'asali mikdash v'shchite b'toichan gufa. And this is what God is saying. I don't only want a dwelling place in this box that is holding the luchot. I want a dwelling place in your physical body, in your home, in your being. Build me a temple, I will dwell amongst you, plural, amongst all of you. And to bring this into actuality, this is a job of a Jew. Because our connection above is gold. It's our soul, our godly soul. See, if you take the L out of gold, you have God. Above, every one of us is connected to God in a revealed way. Our souls exist without a physical body. It's not a challenge. It's not a difficulty. We're literally sitting and just basking in the light of God. When you come into a physical body, that's when the challenges come in. That's when the difficulties, the obstacles, the day-to-day temptations of this world can easily sway us away from that. The goal, as we said a second ago, is to recalibrate and reconnect down here, just as we are above, to reach a state of oneness. Okay. שמדובר רק ביחס למשכן, לאופן שבני ישראל נדבו למשכן, או יש כסף ונחושת קדימה לגבי זהב. אבל כשמדובר עוד בני ישראל שעושה אז כל המשכן, וכל דורש בו עניין הזהב, מכיוון שיהודי גם היוס מציוס למטה. יש שייך לכל ראש זהב, שלכן בכוח לעשות אז המשכן להשם. And this is how we have the power to make a dwelling place for God. So as we said above, our true connection to God above is through gold. So by, one second. When we, again, tap into that connection above, which is the real gold of who we are, we're able to use that power to manifest down here in the physical world as well. That strong connection. יש למרס to שזהו גם הטעם לכך שבני ישראל היה אז ריבוי זהב וכסף גם פשוטos. And also, as we said, that since the Jewish people all had a multitude of silver, gold, and copper in abundance, kiza mistalshel mitzalam shematzad etzem anina heina ashirim b'darga zahav mamila mistalshel b'zeh gam ashiras b'gershom ריבוי זהב. ואף על פי זה, ועל זה יום תרגם יום זה, שפירוש פרשס ויעקב, מחילך את התורה אז הנדבס הזהב, נדבס הכסף נחושת, בבייס פסוקים נדרבים. יבוא הנשים עד הנשים על נרבב לב אביעס כך. כל כלי זהב, talking about the other mentionings of the silver and gold, וכל איש אשר הניף תנופס זהב, השם. בבייס פסוקים לאחר זה, Kalmarim, Trumas Kesav Rechoshes, Kafisha Haramban, Mavar, Mavavor, Zechir, Shem, Hanashim, Shachem, Kesav Rechoshes, Raks, the Hav. Okay, fine. Zion, not adding anything else. Okay. Alpiza Yuvan Gam Hashaichus, the Chodesh Adar, Vahakdim. Okay, now we have to connect. So we start off with talking about the month of Adar, and that our Mazal is strong, and therefore we have to be Simcha, be joyful. And then we start talking about Parshas Truma. And now we're going to return back to the month of Adar and see how these two are connected. As we said earlier, that in the month of Adar, our Mazal is healthy or strong. A question arises. We have a contradiction. Because the rabbis, on one hand, teach us when we enter the month of Adar, we have to be joyful because our mazal is healthy and strong. But the rabbis also teach us, Ein mazal Yisrael. The Jewish people are not bound by our mazal. In other words, the mazal is also connected to the constellations of the stars. And the way things are aligned above, one way they call it fates or determined there's an arrangement of the energy, if you will, between the stars and the planets. Some people call it a horoscope, if you will, which kind of predetermines things in someone's life. But the soul of a Jew is above that. It's from a higher place. So therefore, we learn that the Ein Mazal, the Israel, the Jewish people are not bound by our Mazal. So if the Mazal doesn't control us because we're above it, what does it mean that our Mazal is healthy in the month of Adar? The Chora afilo al pilamar afilo devar reshi al ein mazal Yisrael. The al yidei tefila v'zechos mistaneh mazal l'toiva. So the fact that we're not bound by our mazal, how could it be that our mazal has changed to good when we're above it? Hainu shebnei Yisrael yesh mazal ech ayikoach chazak yoser. That the Jewish people, that there is to mazal, that there's a power even more than that. לא שעל ידי כוח שני משתנה מזל, אלא שהמזל מצד עצמו הוא בריאה. So what does it mean that the mazal itself is healthy? Does it mean that we have the power to go above the mazal, more so than normal? It means the mazal itself is healthy. So what does it mean? Again, as we said, the Jewish people are not underneath or bound or controlled by our mazal. All the Rekagoyim, all Talmidoi Hashemayim, all but the nations are if you will, I want to say controlled, are under the influence of the sun and the moon and the constellations, which is why they used to pray to the sun and moon and constellations, because they realized the energy was coming to them through them. Of course, there's God that controls that. But the soul of a Jew comes from a higher place. I feel even as our souls descend down into our physical bodies, God chose our bodies from amongst the nations of the world. And also down here in this physical world, we're not bound by our mazal. And specifically through prayer and through and merit of good deeds, we can always turn our mazal to good. Meaning, if God forbid it's determined that something bad is going to happen to someone, and through prayer, through elucidating God's mercy, through doing good deeds, you could change that and go above it and transform it to good. But all this is connected to a power that is above. But it's not talking about the mazal itself, where it's saying that the mazal itself is healthy this month. But of course, the unique thing of the month of Adar is higher than this. And again, even as we find ourselves down here in this physical world, souls and bodies, our mazal is strong in this month. What does it mean? And that the second we enter into the month, boom, the mazal is healthy. What's going on? To add to this, and according to the deeper dimensions of the Torah, Ein Mazal Yisrael, as we said, Ein Mazal Yisrael, there's no Mazal to the Jewish people. But now we're going to do a little twist. What does it mean? Mazal Yisrael, who? Bechinas Ein. Ein. Bittul. Wow. What does it mean? So when it says Ein Mazal to the Jewish people, it means really the Mazal doesn't control over the Jewish people. But when you explain it in a deeper way, according to Kabbalah and Chassidut, Ein, which is Aleph Yud Nun, also means Ayin, or nothingness, which connects to what we say is Bitul, or self-nullification, or what we call mysterious nefesh, self-sacrifice. And the Rebbe is saying now that this is what it means, Ein Mazal Yisrael, that the Mazal of the Jewish people is from Ayin, from Bitul. We're healthy when we're nullified to God. When we try to feel like we're separate from God, and you see it in Israel right now with the government. God is breaking everything apart right now. For years, they said, we don't need God. We're going to build a state, within a country, and we're going to have a powerful army and high tech, and we're going to be sophisticated, and we're going to be like the Goyim, and we're going to want to be like everyone else, and we don't need God, and we're not going to mention God in our money. We're not going to mention God in our constitution. There'll be no mention of God anywhere. We want nothing to do with it. Well, you see how that's working out right now. You need God. This is what connects us to our source. This is what keeps us healthy. This is what keeps us aligned, if you will. And that is our true health. That's our true blessing when it comes from what we say is surrender, a bittul to God. The realizations that God is the boss, not me. Nozal also means to suck, to suckle, to drip. that energy drips down. Nimshach lamata, below. Shagam kafish Yehudi nimsa lamata v'odam hamazalos. As we find ourselves down here in the physical world. In other words, when we nullify our will to God's will, and when we're aligned with God's will, that energy from God comes into our bodies, and we could be in tune with all these blessings. And that's what the Rebbe is saying now. Isle dina bahare nichri mazal bechinas ayin bittul nullification. The medubar that as we said above, because the inner dimension of every Jew is to fulfill God's will. To the point that our mazal is healthy. Mazal hazak gam the eni basar. Healthy to the point that we will see with our physical eyes in this physical world the benefit and the blessings of being connected to our Creator. Yes. The feeds Mavanas Hashaykhis to Chodesh Adar to the Parshas Truma. And now we're going to connect this to the month of Adar, why this specifically is in the month of Adar, and also to this week's Parsha, which is Parshas Truma. Nidvas va'isias hamishkan bodi de bitoi v'gilut Yehudi kafishu the mat kachu gam the mat b'tachtoin. And we see that the dwelling and the building of the Mishkan is something that is revealed from the power that came to us from the giving of the Torah, that we could see it came from above, and it's also transformed down here into the physical world. That our true existence is gold, not just as it is above, but down here in the physical world. Bria, and again, gold zahav is for the Rosh Tevis, the acronym of this is giving you health. You're becoming healthy by being connected. And this is the power that is given to us in the month of Adar, especially when we're commanded to build the Mishkan. And our mazal is healthy. And that we're connected to this level of mazal, of healthy mazal, down here in the physical world. In a healthy way. Yes. Okay. And now we can make the connection between entering the month of Adar and increasing in joy. That this happiness is great and that it is connected to every Jew. That we know at the moment that we come to the realization that even down here in the lowest physical worlds, in the most external world, the furthest world from God, a world that conceals and hides over God, we're still connected in the deepest way to Hashem. And even as we find ourselves down here in our souls and bodies, we are literally the sons, the children, and totally one with the King of all kings, God, blessed be He. And we are God's first chosen. We are His gold. Gashmim Tosfim B'Kaim. And the Rebbe says, and therefore, if we properly connect to this level of the gold, not just the physical gold, but the gold in our soul above, we see that every single Jew is rich. The Rebbe says, but Gashmis and Ruchnis, in spiritual matters and in physical matters, literally. And the attentive listener will say, wait a minute, I'm not rich, or I know plenty of Jews that aren't rich. So the journey is to connect to this level of the gold inside. When you find the gold in here, your godly soul, and you realign it with your godly soul above and God, now you're a channel for the wealth and the blessings. And according to this, we could see how it says when you enter the month of Adar, you are supposed to add in Simcha, and the month of Av, you're supposed to decrease in Simcha. And the unique thing is, even as we find ourselves in the world of darkness down below, in the month of Adar specifically, we have the power to transform everything, to reveal good. And when a Jew contemplates this matter, it will cause great joy. The realization that, wow, we're connected in the deepest way to God above, down here below. The simcha kazeh mishnah as chayiv hagashmi shechit ba'odem hazeh v'ta'im legidrei teva ha'odem. And this joy can literally transform our lives, our physical lives, down here in this physical world, and transform the entire world around us. And the content and the idea of this joy is that it should affect and penetrate every aspect of our lives. We should become happy people. And our life should be life filled with joy and happiness. And this joy should affect all of our doing, all of our deeds. And when we are happy, not only will it make us happy, but those around us will be happy as well. And this joy will enter into our and into success in all that we do, in every aspect of our lives, and it should be, and you will see it and feel it. It will become palatable. In other words, it says there's no one like me in the world to come and no one like me in this world. Like truly, God. In this physical world, our life will become filled with joy and blessings and true life. Wow, very powerful stuff. Okay, we're going to skip over Yud, just bringing some things from the Gemara. I don't like when I say that because it makes it sound like it's not important. It is. It's just a little bit of a detour from where we're at. And we're going to hop in on Yud Aleph. And now everything we learned above, we have to bring into actuality. The call the Rosh. First of all, Nimlad Bakach, that Hashem gave us this Torah, this holy Torah. HaTorah Nitzchis Makol Hadoros, an eternal Torah. Excuse me. For all generations. Makol Makaimis in all places. Shekol Yehudi Shrach Makol the Rosh, the Zahav. And to know that every Jew is connected to this level of gold. Pashtus, in a simple way. Makol Yehudi Tzrich Lihiyos Ba'ashiris. Every single Jew needs to be rich, the Rebbe says. Hein Meruchnias V'Hein Bagashmis. Spiritually rich and materially rich. Ashiris Bapashtis Mamash, in the simplest sense, the Rebbe says. It's very powerful. The Rebbe said every Jew needs to be rich. And even more than this, and no one should have feel like they're lacking anything. But actually, in reality, the Rebbe says every one of us needs to be rich. And the Rebbe says, even right now, if you don't have this revealed in your bank accounts, the Rebbe said it doesn't mean, God forbid, that you can't do it, that it can't be fulfilled. How do you reveal it? Your physical wealth. How do you have physical revelation of money in this world? The Rebbe said we need to reveal it through our service of God. And And how do we do this? We must transform the darkness. How? By adding light. A little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. Tosefas riboy shel shefa rav hagashmi baracha. And this will increase and make tremendous blessings in our physical reality. Boyfriend shel his gavros hachayus that will literally impact our entire life. Shanas shetafon shel gashmi baracha. As ach rach nemalaysay. Ad שזה ההפך השטפונות שלו למעשה משפט המרסויס, לטוב וקדושה. So again, the Rebbe is saying that we in each one of us, there's darkness. The darkness, what is the darkness? It's the place inside of us that's blocking us from who we are. It's the place that's covering over the gold. It's the place that's trying to convince us to be like everyone else and act like everyone else and dress like everyone else and hide our Jewish identity and not learn Torah and doesn't matter and don't pay attention and whatever Bubba Mind says is telling us. We have to increase our light. We have to bring Torah and God and mitzvot into our life and push away that darkness. And when we do that, what do we see? We see the gold is always there. It's just been covered over. We've always been rich. We always have had abundance, but it's not translated into actuality because it's covered over. So the Rebbe is saying through our service of God, we can uncover the true essence of who we are, the gold. How much more so in this generation? The last generation of the exile and the first generation of the redemption. When all of our work has been done and the only thing left to do is to accept and bring Mashiach into our lives. For sure that Hashem will bless every single one of us with wealth, with gold, in wealth, physically and spiritually. In such a way. That there won't be any single Jew that will not have abundance of silver and gold, just like when we took it out of Egypt. Excuse me. And that a Jew must do whatever is necessary. That this wealth, this richness, should be revealed in all matters. And how do we do it? The Rebbe says we must start with spiritual wealth. That's the beginning. And there's no richness, rather in that, in knowledge. In other words, you have to learn Torah. When you're learning Torah, you're taking God's wisdom and putting it in here. You're having knowledge of God, right? You see, knowledge is power. Imagine knowledge of God, how much power and how much money that translates into. So we have to understand that we have to first become rich before we focus on our bank accounts. We have to focus on God. Learn Torah, do mitzvah, do whatever is necessary to connect. And this is how we connect to our true wealth. The yoish ashira b'Torah b'mitzvahs, and become rich in Torah and mitzvot. Ba'ad gam ashiras b'gashmis. And the Rebbe said, and then also in material wealth. For the most part, everyone's got this opposite. They're focusing on material wealth first. And alavai, luckily, maybe they'll put a little time in for God, for spirituality. But most time, no. So the Rebbe is telling us to kind of refocus our energies and refocus instead of on the material wealth, on the spiritual wealth, on God and mitzvot. And then the material blessings will come. This is really a lesson on how to become rich, the Rebbe is giving us. In order that we should be able to fulfill Torah and mitzvot in a calm way, in a calm soul with a calm body. In other words, you should never become frantic over making money. And we should increase in giving tzedakah and fulfilling the mitzvot in the best way we possibly can. And Kedei la'asois mebechais v'prati mishkan v'mikdash l'Hashem. And each one of us will have a mishkan, a dwelling. Our lives will transform to a dwelling place for God. Klal gam ayidei nitinas tzedakah levanot beit hakenes v'beit midrash pshuto mikdash mi'atz. And including giving tzedakah to the shuls that turn the shuls into a miniature temple. Good base. And the main thing is the time has already come for the third temple to be built in the most simple way. And we see through the pasuk, build a dwelling place for me, I will dwell amongst you. Excuse me. It's like a never-ending cough. Among every one of the Yidden, they call the Roish, a Perush, the Halacha, Ma'aseh, each one of us are obligated to build our lives into a dwelling place for God. When doing it, Hakavana, the Vano says Beit Hamikdash Hashlishi, Pshuto Mamash. Saktan Rambam Shebana Mashiach Sikenu, the Mashiach will build the third temple, or Vano Mikdash B'Makoimo in his place. Alpi Divrei HaRambam, as Rambam says, the Kol Chayavin Levanos LaAsoid Ba'asmon Mamon, we all must take part in this. Anashim Nishimataf, men, women, and children. Bovan Shechachu V'Noiga, the Beit Hashlishi, and how is this? We see it's connected to the third temple. Shekol Yehudi Shitateh Mezeh Aide Midevoisa, and every one of us become partners in building the space of Mikdash. How? We just talked about it. And specifically, but the reign of Zeh in our generation. Kavar Nichoy V'Haglino Lidim Yehudim Katani Mamshichim Bazar L'Tet HaTzedakah Noisef Takar She'oisim Meiser Shluchim L'Tet HaTzedakah L'Sim L'Hen Gam Kesav N'Asam and giving the tzedakah, even teaching little children the importance of giving tzedakah. Yud Gimel. Noisef L'Chach, in addition to this, as we enter into the month of Adar to increase in this joy, with a good and a happy heart. And we're standing in the opening of the month of Adar. And that year there was 2 Adars, as we said. Like it is no the koach michad, we have a unique power. Special power in the month of Adar to transform any undesirable things to good. And every one of us should take upon good resolutions in everything we said to increase. And all the matters should be done with great joy. In that month of that again, so 2 Adars brings even more simcha. And everything should be in a good and holy way. And everything should be done in the best way possible. And it's a connection to all matters of joy. The joy in and of itself, for no reason, breaks through any boundaries. How much when we have an abundance of joy. Like in the month of Adar. And every single day we must increase in more and more joy from the day it was before. But Pashtus in a simple sense. Every single one of us must add in joy. First of all, we have to make ourselves happier, and we have to encourage and make others happier as well. The call the race, first of all, and that God should gladden our hearts. First by learning Torah. the revealed part of the Torah and the inner part of the Torah. And the most important thing is that it should come to deed. That we should fulfill our mitzvahs in the most beautiful way possible. And the main thing should be that this great increase in joy should affect our Torah and mitzvot. And also just simcha in and of itself. Including all the material matters that we do. And including following the code of Jewish law, again, for ourselves and also for others. And in our home, we should make our wives happy. And our children happy. Okay. And again, to increase in the joy of all those around us, to make everyone happy. It's a great mitzvah to make those happy. Yudal, may be God's will. That we should all add an increase in our joy. And we should break through any boundaries or limitations. Including the breaking through of the boundaries of the gods. The facham, the Torah kedusha, and transform them to good and holiness. The beikar, and mainly the peruis es gedari, and breaking through any boundaries or obstacles. Shel harega achron agolos, the last moments of the exile. And we are in already the first moments of the redemption. Including all of our deeds and our service. Including specifically in adding and joy. Including the service of the righteous women of the Jewish people. And the merit of the righteous women, they will bring the redemption. Including unfortunately, there was a horrible incident that a woman died al pi Kiddush Hashem, and it's a horrible thing in Crown Heights, and the Rebbe is mentioning it, including that specific woman who gave her life al pi Kiddush Hashem, and Rachmani Litzlan Hashem Shabbatak V'Hira Atzayin Shehet Shem Mekdash Acharein Kagoyin Shel Inin Hapratis V'Klal V'Chan V'Havi V'Rak V'Harichos Yamim, and that we should all have long days and long life, including all the Jewish people, men, women, and children, in health, and our mazal in health in the month of Adar, especially when we should have health and abundance in all our gashmias and ruchnias. And that we should go without any separation at all. The chaim nitzchim, to eternal life. The true and complete redemption. And this is through every one of the jinn. And even those who have passed, they will rise from the dust, and they will sing and they will dance. And as promised, that our mouths will be filled with laughter. And the vessel for this is joy. In these times we are now, and God will surely fill our mouths with joy. Including the leader of our generation, Yosef Yitzchak, and this is hinted on the name. Yitzchak is from the Russian tzachok, or laughter. We should add on joy and laughter. And this applies to all the Jewish people, the men, the women, the young, and the old. And we will go together with our silver and our gold. Including all the temples and the house of good deeds in America, outside of Israel. That we will all travel to the holy land of Israel, the Yerushalayim Har Kodesh, to the holy city of Jerusalem, the Har Kodesh, to the holy mountain, to the base of Migdash Shlishi. Techaf Miad Mamish. It happened immediately. God should bless you and bless all of Am Yisrael, that we should have true joy, we should have true abundance and wealth in our spiritual and physical matters, and we should have the ultimate joy of the fullest Gadol of Melech HaMashiach right now. God bless you, Moshiach Now.